Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Barca, with co-hosts, teacher and socialist Andy Lipson, and socialist and community college math professor Michael Hoffman. We're online at whatsleft.podcast.com. You can find that link to our site in the episode notes. You can also find my personal social media handle as at Don Eduardo Barca. Please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications, and share your favorite episode wherever you found this episode. We have merch as well. If you fancy a shirt, you can contact us to our site, and Andy will take care of that and get your the measurements for your shirt.
And the slogan, you can choose your slogan you want on the back of that shirt too.
Yes, I have mine, and so
we got to get one for Michael.
I sent an email. Did you see my email asking for a shirt?
No. Did you send?
You're not checking your email, Andy Lipson.
Wait, did you send me a personal email, or you sent it actually to the What's Left podcast?
On the What's Left thing.
That's crazy.
Maybe it didn't go through.
That's not good.
I wasn't sure what I wanted on the back. I floated a bunch of ideas.
Try it again. Try it again, and let me see if it comes to me.
Okay.
And then send me an email when you've done that. Because if that's not working, then this whole thing's been a lie. We've been lying to our audience the whole time because I'm not sure what's going on there.
Oh.
And you go to like What's Left podcast, and you go to the contact thing, and it says contact, right, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay, that's how you would do it. So
yeah,
try it one more time.
Okay.
All right, let's get back. So if you do fancy a shirt, contact Andy at whatsleft.podcast.com. Apparently, we have some glitches happening. All right, here we go. Andy, take it away. Topic of today.
So this is an episode I've wanted to do for a few weeks, but Trump decided to invade Venezuela and kidnap Maduro, and so we couldn't do that. But kind of an episode where we talk about 2025, like just sort of like what was 2025 for us as a part of What's Left, personally, politically. I have a few questions here, a number of questions written down for my colleagues to think about, and I'd like to just chat with you guys about last year, and maybe even go forward and talk about maybe some things we might want to do with What's Left or for the coming year. But that's what I want to talk about. Oh, I did forget to say this, Eduardo. Congratulations on your first all Spanish episode of What's Left.
We're having our second one tonight.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
I just wasn't able to get to it because of the street market. I was so tired. But yes, thank you.
So
I should mention it at the beginning of every intro.
Yep. But anyway, that's what I was hoping to do today.
Yes,
cool.
Perfect. And one quick note on that. I would be interested in having you both have a conversation with us on Venezuela with Luismi, but it'll be slow, so we'll just have to edit it, the interpreting times, and then that would be nice, but that'd take a long time. All right. So how would you like to start? Would you like to start with
Michael? I'll just start hitting you guys with questions.
Sure. But we'll do a round question.
Yeah. So I'm going to probably give you two. Like, what was your two favorite episodes, one at a time? So we'll just do round one and then round two. What were your two favorite episodes of What's Left? And I can start with the first one if you want me to.
Go ahead.
My first favorite episode was the Doge PSYOP. And there were two reasons. The first reason was that was like, I don't know if that was an episode I did with Brandy. I might have been the first one we did before we did the Real ID. Although we did do a Halloween thing, but that was sort of like a fun one. This was like an actual What's Left episode. And I really enjoyed doing that episode with Brandy. I would love to get her more involved. But it was just a lot of fun. And secondly, I learned a lot because you couldn't be there, Eduardo. I had to kind of like do more, research, because I just felt like I had to carry a little more weight. And I really feel like I got a better understanding that Doge was like such a part of what I predicted would happen under Trump. That digital transformation of society would really pick up speed. I really got to see that through that episodes. But so that episode really stands out as like both being really fun to do with Brandy, and I learned a lot. And I think people who heard it, got a different view of Doge.
Well, I have a difficult time choosing a top two, but I do think by the criteria you laid out, the one that I learned the most doing was the AI and education one, because I actually did a lot of reading for that one, and I think it turned out, very informative, and actually ended up, having some impact on people around me. So that one, I would say, for those reasons, it was my favorite. But I have some other, for different reasons, favorites. So I'll say it to you later. Your turn, Eduardo.
I don't know if it's a favorite, but the one that I felt was impactful in the way that I think and what I'm trying to develop, because one of your questions was about political development for 2025, was the one that we did on the rise and fall of the New York prison guard wildcat strike.
That was going to be one of mine.
Yeah, because for me, it's you're trained, especially if you grow up in liberal California or liberal Mexico, you're trained to, mostly in the USA, it's like you're trained to pick sides. And I think it was trying to make sense of how do you support something even when it seems antithesis of who you are as well, right? Like, I'm not pro prisons, but I am pro huelgas, strikes, union strikes, and that are genuine, and that you could see how the governor and people just did not support and let everyone down, as far as like you divide and conquer those workers. And I didn't see much on the right or the left, to be honest, be supportive of that strike. And that was one of the episodes where I felt it was important for me to understand my politics and moving forward how I want to think about the world, and not be on this left-right axis of how I normally have been programmed to think about these things, right? When you're thinking of political causes. And so that was mind-blowing for me.
Yeah, that was definitely in the running for me on a favorite episode. For the same reasons, it got me thinking in a very different way that I never thought. It forced me to really think about what I thought about working class struggle in a different way, deeper way.
Right.
My second one.
Oh, go ahead.
So the second one was Uncle Aaron, COINTELPRO, and the limits of rationality. I mean, when I got that news, when I got that information from Aaron Leonard, or really from a podcast of Aaron Leonard that Aaron Leonard was on, it just blew me away. It was it was very like disorienting, but yet in many ways confirming of all the things that I'm against. And then when I think about what we've done with Operation Gladio 2 and the things I've learned about that, has kind of layered on a deeper level to which the way the state comes in. But I was really just grateful to have a place to come like What's Left with you guys and talk personally about the impact politically of how my uncle was targeted, and how this targeting was like such a damaging part of our family. Like, there's other things that have happened in our family, but this was like it was a giant kind of missile dropped on our family. And it was just by this CIA guy who's like, I'm going to fuck with the Communist Party, and I'm going to fuck with them through Uncle Aaron. And yes, I'm bitter about that. I was angry about that, but also just to be able to share that with you, like my feelings about it, and to really resurrect Uncle Aaron for me, who I do miss. And that was a special episode to be able, and for you all to be like, so like, yeah, let's talk about it. That meant a lot to me. And so that would be my second most important episode for me this year.
Well, now I'm going to squeeze in a bunch of my favorites.
Cheater.
My personal favorite, because it was my first episode, was the Do We Need Revolutionary Organizations, because I got to lay out a bunch of ideas that I hadn't actually really expressed in the open in a long time. But I would say that the most recent really impactful episode was the follow-up to your uncle's one with Aaron Leonard. That I really felt like the Aaron Leonard episode was important for me to listen to, like in terms of my own, like, trying to do something in the world and understanding exactly how powerful the state is and how sophisticated it is. But then I would say that also, the one about the No Kings, No Soul. That one sticks out in my mind as being an episode that I think No Kings, No Soul, Nowhere. I remember that having like a kind of a emotional impact on me, because we talked about just the bankruptcy of this kind of performative liberal protest, and some of the ideas we talked about in there really, I think, guided me through the rest of my year. So sorry.
No,
not just two.
You get a gold star for one of those episodes. Was your favorite? Was actually one you weren't necessarily on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. It's not all about me. Sometimes.
Kind of. It's at least 1/3 about you.
Right now, currently.
Yes.
Let's see. There's two that I'm thinking about. The one that I feel that I think about them in the way that how I grew. What's his name? What's his name, Andy? The guy that the academic who kept coming
Eric
on.
Heinz.
Eric Heinz. I think twice he came on, and I think he was quite brave to be on with us, given that we're just on the opposite sides. I mean, not on the opposites. We're like on the left, but we're just not indulging in academia. And for him to have come and for us to have a conversation with him was different. Was just in like it was surprising, and I feel quite grateful for someone to take this from academia standpoint. Honestly, like, we have a conversation that is real and challenging, and we're trying to have those kind of conversations here on What's Left. And for him to come into this lion's den, it does make it makes it a little. I'm just grateful for someone that chose to do something like that. But with Eric Haynes, I think it was genuine.
Yeah, I have to say that I feel the same way. Like, I'm suspicious of people from academia. They often kind of hide behind a particular posture. And he has a posture, but he was very warm and vulnerable and open. And I was surprised by that, So that was, I feel the same way as you do, Eduardo. You leave it at that?
Yeah.
Okay. Next, and Michael, we'll start with you since I started the last one off.
Okay.
And then we might go 2 times around. What would you say are the most important events that took place in 2025? You can use any criteria.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think I'd have to say the assassination of Charlie Kirk, in a way. Not because it's an event that is so important, but I do feel like I figured a lot of things out from watching what happened. And it's mainly on domestic politics, but that the assassination of Charlie Kirk was where it really forced me to think about the ideology of the right and come again to terms with religiosity and like why religiosity is so important to people, and how it plays politically. But I mean, I could say the strike on Iran and Iran's response. I could say, now we could say the kidnapping of Maduro. I mean, there's a lot of big things that happened. Could maybe be like the resistance against ICE, but I really do think the Charlie Kirk thing was very illustrative on many levels about U.S. politics.
And I'll remind you, Maduro's abduction was January 2026.
Okay, sorry, doesn't count.
Eduardo?
I think I have to say, yeah, Charlie Cook was the cancel culture of the right. It's the same thing that both the left and the right has done, and that shows us that censorship is, we have to stick by the principle of absolute freedom of speech, because both sides, especially in the USA, Democrats and Republicans, are trying to figure out a way to silence. And I don't think we're really there. How do you say it? Like, freedom of speech is in danger. Like, it's a threatened right of ours, and we have to protect it at all costs, even if it means there are people who are going to say things that we disagree with. And so I don't know how people can be all right with the aftermath of Charlie Kirk when 600 people have been censored. There was a Reuters article about that. People have been politically persecuted, could say that, for saying things that, especially on college campuses, students, workers dismissed from their jobs. I think we have to really uphold that. And with the new laws enacted about 5 years of history for anyone who's going to visit the US, if you're going to get a visa, tourist visa, you have to get your history checked. What does that mean for us? My partner and I, our future, we speak about anti-imperialism against the USA. That's what we do here, and then we're trying to do the Spanish podcast, and all that we're going to be speaking about is against you and the USA. I don't know if I'll be able to go visit my family with my partner in California. Yeah, I guess both of you have to come down to Mexico.
Right.
So, those are the things I'm concerned about. So I have to give it to Michael. Yeah, Charlie Kirk has been a pivotal point, but it's not new. So it's just been another tool, another way, but manifested on the right.
That was one I definitely thought about. I think for me, because I keep coming back to it so many times this year, and it's whatever happened at that Home Depot when those ICE agents were coming in to say, we're snatching this, we're taking this person. And there was just a response of, no, you're not. Like that, everything I've read about that hour that took place, and maybe the subsequent hours after that, is really everything I'm thinking. People are going to think this is about violence or something. Like, it's about people standing up for themselves and refusing to comply with the illegality, the immorality, and the demonic nature of the state, right? Like, they weren't going to just let it happen. And I'm going to tell you, if federal agents, ICE agents, or federal agents came into most workplaces, most people would just let it happen. It would happen at our school. And I think it's so important that there was a set of people who were prepared to say, it's not going to happen this time. No, we're not letting this go down. And I think it was so important because it helped me see that, no, this is what's going to be required of us. And then also it helped me see the thing that, Michael, you were talking about, the other face of it, the no kings, the sanitized version of it, turning that that fight back into something that can be sanitized and directed. So it was really important for that to happen, and for me to get a vision of what I think we're going to have to do in the resistance, because I also think there's a creation aspect to it. And I recognize that what people did at Home Depot is more resistance than creation. But it's important. It's important that people stood up for each other in a way that was really putting something at risk. And I really just believe that that's what's going to have to happen for all of us. So for me, that element of creation of solidarity, actually, they created solidarity for one another in the face of a tremendous force of the state. That to me is like probably one of the biggest things that has resonated as I've thought about what I would like to see and what we're fighting for versus what's on offer in terms of resistance. Maybe let's do round two.
Well, that was my second one. I was going to say, seeing people actually fight back. And you get a glimpse of what, a spirit of rebellion that does pose an alternative where people are not allowed to be snatched by the state. So that one's really important. I do think, though, that since we already said that one, now I get another one,
You do.
which is the conversations we had, the developing situation in Venezuela, and the conversations we had about it, and on trying to figure out the relationship between the events in Venezuela and Ukraine and China. The Venezuela events in particular, in the context of what we had discussed in terms of the Marathon Initiative, strategic sequencing. So we got to see the escalation of the U.S. pressuring the Maduro regime all the way to now to this completely new, bizarre phase that, I think a lot of it. I actually, when I talk about it now with people, the people who are knee-jerk on the side of Venezuela, I don't think want to hear that they may have been sold out by their own
No, they don't
ruling class, right? So there's not even a left framework that can. So that's a huge thing, I do think, for the left. It's like even the demonstrations were all very small, except for in Minneapolis after they murdered
Renee
Good. Yeah. But I see that the significance of the Venezuela event is that we're going to do what the fuck we want. And really the world is showing there's not going to be real resistance to it. Even more so than, we saw a lot of that in Gaza, but then when they finally hit Iran, they got hit back, but now there's just there's no recourse for the U.S. empire. It's kind of crazy. And I don't think people know how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
What I struggle with, not so much here in Mexico, it's interesting. People ask my partner, Rizmi, they say, what do you think of the situation in Venezuela? And Luismi says, well, obviously, I'm glad Maduro's gone, but I'm not all right with, I feel insecurity about, the next phase of this. It's no good when you have U.S. intervention. Every Mexican says, yes, that's right. Every Mexican knows that. If there was intervention here in Mexico, I do think Mexicans would rise. I have a feeling they would. I'm not sure if they know their potential and power, but they certainly would not acquiesce and say, yes, bring on, just save us. They're not that way. And so Luismi has noted, he said, how come I talk with fellow Venezuelans and they want U.S. intervention? I talk with Mexican folk here and they say the gringos are crazy. so there's a difference. But why am I saying that is because I struggle. I have a I have a South American community I following and interaction with, and I struggle talking about the USA with them. They think migrating, and that's why everyone wanted to migrate. With my Central American comrades, and with my South American comrades as well, they want to be in the USA, and then they there's so much. It's better over there. It's better over there. And when I try to describe the situation and how their fellow migrants are doing, where they live, how they're also stuck in so many ways, how there is another set of chains that they have to belong to, that conveying that is difficult, you know? And I don't know how to discuss that. But in this recent year, with it's not, I don't want it to be because of Trump. It just happens to be this year where I think people are waking up to some of the things that the USA is doing, like shooting their own people, gunning them down, and no accountability for anything, any of it. And maybe they weren't aware of it before, maybe because it's in the Americas and not in the Middle East. But the intervention and the desire to come into the Americas is suddenly that they're just like, oh my gosh, it's too much. Suddenly, discussions into Mexico and Colombia, and these are the things that they're saying it's starting to be visible to them, and so I now don't want to talk about migration in the lens of a humanitarian reason. It's now a different reason for me. I've changed in that area, that I do think that this is further escalating, further driving the fourth industrial revolution into a vigilante state where we're all going to be just numbers and seen that way. And we have to move as one thought or one brain. And that's decided by the, the, the power of the ruling class, right? The people who are trying to dictate how that will function and benefit them. And I'm able to now show the USA's for the true colors. I mean, they've always been this way. I mean, but it's a little bit hard for me to transmit that message. I don't know how to explain that, because I speak to them and they think it's a better situation. How and they don't understand how with two citizenships, two passports, why I'm living in Latin America, why am I in Mexico, why I'm not living comfortably in the USA. And I love the people, I love the country, the USA. I don't like the government, and I am afraid of the way that it's being run. And that's hard to explain.
Mhm.
But with all this going on with the police state, I mean, I see more of it. Right now, it's immigration. And I think and I said this before last year. I said, no, I can't say last year anymore. 2024, I said this with you, Andy. I said this when I was in a different background. I said, I think the way that the new administration is going to come in to control our lives is going to be through immigration first. And then after that, it's going to be just attacking dissidents. And that's the future. If you, contrary to the government, you're a domestic terrorist.
Mhm.
So it starts with the easier targets, the immigrants, and then it's the rest of us.
Yep. Yeah. That's what we've been saying the whole time around the whole open borders question, and why we don't believe that we as workers have no interest in national boundaries, or certainly using them to keep workers working, to restrict workers moving anywhere. So yeah, but that's a position we've had for a while.
And we're criticized China, but this will be just as, I think, controlled. I mean, Las Vegas just had their tech expo of robots, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, we should just add some clips here. People, the future is so here, and you can see the people developing these arms, part of the military industrial complex, and we are so fucked in the way that, I mean, it's just so bad. And all the films that we've seen about robots, like iRobot with Will Smith, and all, those things are not fantasies. It really is coming to get us all, you know.
Yeah.
So,
and to speak of robots and military and war, for me, the biggest event was to watch unfold the negotiations around Ukraine. The reason that was so important is because when I say, oh, I knew that they weren't going to reach an agreement, what I mean is everything I know about Marxism and capitalism tells me that they're not going to reach an agreement. And my assessment that we are in World War III and things like that, that's what I believe. And I use what I know of Marxism and how it helped me understand capitalism and imperialism to make that claim. And
Will
it
you
has been
recap
very.
that?
What's
Sorry.
that?
Sorry to interrupt. I was saying, would you recap that argument?
Well, just because these aren't we're not watching policies. We're watching the competition for profits and resources that has at a particular place where capitalism, where profits are harder to come by and resources are becoming restricted in relationship to the actual consumptive needs of the productive capacities of all the various capitalist centers. So that is what's driving this war. And so far from the Ukraine being a negotiated settlement, I would say we're not going to reach a settlement. And in fact, the war is going to expand. And that I do believe is what we're seeing. But it's been interesting to watch how this negotiation has been used to fool people at different points in times. Like that has been really revealing to me, not about people's stupidity or anything like that, but just like how the state is crafty as shit, and how Europe will play their little role, and 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 so I've learned a lot. But I will say what it has done is grounded me more, made me more confident that Marxism has something to say about the real world. There are questions I have about Marxism, but there are some things I don't have questions. It keeps proving its value over and over again. And so that was a really important thing. Had there been a settlement and it stuck or something like that, it would have left me with deep questions about how I understood what was going on. So to see that take place was very confirming for me about the set of ideas I used to try to understand the world, and then to watch how it took place was like, wow, this is spin and psyop, and it was very instructive for me in many ways. So, next question. Oh, and Eduardo, you're going to start with this. Eduardo, do you want to start with most important reading or most important podcast for you?
Either way.
Then podcast.
All right. I think I hate to admit this because I feel it's how would you say eye candy for listening candy would be ear candy? Ear candy would be
and maybe like a guilty pleasure kind of thing.
I've been listening to Candace Owens and been listening to I hate admitting to that, and to what's his name? The other guy. But I didn't like hearing and you Tucker Carlson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and these people, just that world, those people, I find it fascinating that the way that they are now the outliers of the traditional Republican right, it's just, and even like Megyn Kelly, sometimes I'll indulge a little bit. These are not people I would take seriously, by the way. I'm just letting people know that. They're not people like Brian Berletic or anyone. I just feel that sometimes I need a dosage of, that's my pop culture, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
For a long time, I didn't know who the Kardashians were. These are the political Kardashians for me in the world. This is what I listen to from time to time. and I subscribe, then I unsubscribe, subscribe, unsubscribe, and then it's just infighting and drama and whatever, and all these conspiracies, and this Owens wants to go on to, and I listened also to French news and how she's so popular in France now towards Brigitte Macron, and it's just so it's my guilty pleasure.
I actually do listen to Candace Owens a lot, particularly around around the Charlie Kirk stuff. So I mean that has been helpful for me too. But I take her more seriously, although I do think she's a psyop. But I do listen to her. I don't listen to Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly too much. Maybe like I'll see things on them. The one for me, I'll probably be stealing this one from Michael, is Brian Berletic, The New Atlas. I just enjoy listening to him just get so frustrated about, I'm telling you people, Trump is not a peace candidate. The U.S. is not da 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 da. Like, I love him just thumping away, going back to the 2019 the Rand document, or I think it was about, what was the title of it, for something, doing something to Russia, stretching Russia or something like that.
Oh,
Extending Russia,
extending, yeah.
And then the February Hegseth speech, where he literally says to Europe, "You guys got to like raise a bunch of money, and you guys got work to do." And then he's like, all of a sudden, everyone right after that speech thought that Europe was fleeing, was breaking from the United States, and he's like, they're literally doing exactly what the United States told him to do. So for me, he has been, like, when I'm getting frustrated, I really enjoy listening to him, because he just cannot, he is so measured, but he cannot help himself from showing how pissed he is about having to say the same shit over and over again, or that, look, Trump is not a peace candidate, continuity of agenda. Really, it's a Marxist, it is connected to what I believe is a Marxist argument, that these are not, they don't have policy choices. You're watching the state move. Berletic is not a Marxist, I don't believe, but his continuity of agenda is rooted, for me, I take it as related to imperialism. Is not a policy; it's a condition of the capitalist system. So that's my favorite podcast. That's my go-to podcast this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's not fair. It wouldn't be fair for me to claim it, because you're the one who introduced me to Brian Berletic. But I will say, The New Atlas, Brian Berletic is like, it's like essential. It's like he provides so much important factual context from the ruling class itself about what they are thinking, and connects it together, puts it in a historical context, and whether he's a Marxist or not, he is definitely supporting those of us who would point to this as a systemic issue that has inertia. This is about material interests and a whole structure of exploitation, and it's not going to be changed just because the president is like, the president is like a silly guy, a silly man. That's not that's not what decides U.S. imperial policy. I would add another one that I have found very grounding, is actually what's going on with shipping. It's just this guy who does he's a shipping historian, and one of the reasons why I like it so much is that he basically shows you how many ships are going between the countries, and it shows you that, like, capitalism is still ticking, and as much as, like, the hype seems to ratchet up, and the rhetoric, and people think things are ending or collapsing, it's like, no, the ships are still going. There's still trade. And also, it helped me understand a little bit about what the U.S. was doing in terms of capturing the vessels. They still do rely on this international law apparatus for themselves. There is a sense in which they need international. They do still rely somewhat on international law for their legitimacy. as much as they can flout it, they also do sort of try to make it look like they're obeying laws, which also explains why the images of the people walking with Maduro are DEA agents. And like, if you think about it, like the whole pretext of drugs, I mean, is just absurd, right? But they have to make it seem like it's drug. They're enforcing that they're enforcing drug laws, and that's why they kidnapped Maduro. I mean, it's crazy. But what's going on with shipping? Great podcast. Will help you feel like you're grounded in reality.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. Thank you.
Reading. Do we want to do a reading one, or do we want to move on?
No, it's good.
Oh, I can't
I
hear
have
you.
2 on different categories.
Okay.
I'll be fast.
Then, yeah, I'll just do, because in some ways mine's kind of a bit of a cheat, but it is the thing. This was actually written in 2024, but I keep referring to it in 2025, which is the Rand Corporation Commission on the National Defense Strategy, where they had been initially talking about how defense spending was way too low. It was going to have to go up, like not just by a little, not by 100 billion, but like way up, like double, triple even. And why it was going to have to do that. And like what was the chapter 4, creating an all elements of national power approach to defense, all of government, adding the private sector, all of the nation, allies and partners, right? It was just like, I just feel like that document I keep coming back to it as a resource, like particularly now with Trump going, you know what, 1.5 trillion, like I'm just spitballing here, but he's not spitballing. These people have set all this stuff up. And this is what Brian Berletic has helped me see some of this stuff. I know it, but now you can prove it, and so I would say that's probably one of the more important documents that I've continued to resource through the 2025. And now, and it was written in 2024.
Well, now I got to read it. See, I didn't read that one.
Yeah.
I joined what's left in 2025.
Right.
So I'm behind.
Yeah. What about you, Michael?
Well, I'll say in the category of essential journalism, contemporary journalism, Empire of AI by Karen Howe, I believe is essential reading. It really, actually, I would call it a political economy book, meaning it actually does connect the economic dynamics with the political dynamics, and helps make it make a case that this AI drive is much more of a financialized scramble for profits than it is a quest for world domination. The world domination is always coming with, sort of implied by the quest for financial profits. But she really does, I think, lays out some really important details that I think make me much more critical of the rhetoric around AI, like AI becoming, at some point, becoming generalizable intelligence, but also that there is a race to replace human beings, and that was actually the defining feature of this AI craze that attracted so much investment. And I would add that in my theory category, Emergency Capitalism by Fabio Vigi was very important in helping me think through how we may have to adapt, how the changing economy, moving towards something that is very much trying to replace human labor. There's all kinds of political consequences to that, and that the COVID emergency really was an example of a capitalist state that is evolving its methods for managing crises. So thank you, Fabio Vigi, because he's also a really awesome guy, and that was fun when he came and visited us. Those are my two.
And I have one more, if I could add it, Eduardo. Could I do that? Okay, I gotta go get, because I can never remember the title. Hold on. My reading group would kill me if I didn't mention this, but it didn't come to my mind for whatever reason. The comments on the
Society of the Spectacle.
Society of Suspectable by Guy Debord. Like we've been spending all year going through the thesis by thesis, and what is so meaningful for me is he's one of those revolutionaries, one of those socialists, communists. He's a situationist who didn't try to sugarcoat how fucked up the situation was back in the 80s. It didn't come to some conclusion that was up and away. And in fact, he thought things were very much locked down and locked in for the capitalists. Like they had us in their sights, and they had the shots hit their target kind of thing. And I find it really useful to look at a revolutionary who believes revolution is necessary, but who has come to the conclusion that it's maybe nearly impossible to get there, and is wondering how it re-arrived at that place. And the discussions I'm having with my comrades about this in the study group have really been helpful. So it would be crazy for me not to mention that reading as something that has been very helpful for me to find common cause with a revolutionary who's deeply pessimistic about the possibilities, but it also shines where there are lights of hope for me that maybe he doesn't have. And I keep reminding myself that, only a few years after he writes this book, he kills himself. And I'm not surprised based on how important the notion of changing society was to him. And at the same time, he's coming to the conclusion that maybe it can't happen, and maybe they've already got us in this trap. Because I think that would be, I can see how a person can become inconsolable if they truly felt like it was impossible to break out of this. But the hold that he says that the capitalists have, and he speaks of it as the spectacle, is very intriguing, very real, and even though he was writing in '88, it sounds like today. And if I had heard about it in '88, I would have been, that's an exaggeration. If I had heard about that in 2001 and 2002, maybe even 2010, I still would have called what he's saying an exaggeration. But he had more insight into the way society was 50 years ago than I did 15 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago. So that's very meaningful to me.
I want to second that even though I haven't been at the study groups, the reading that I've done around and from Guy Debord has been actually really, really important. It's helped me actually understand a bunch of the stuff Fabio Vigi was saying too. So yeah, it's a very important set of ideas.
I think I have been reading writings from three, I think, that stand out for me. I try to, well, I'll start off with Jessica Holmes, our former co-host. I read all her postcards and her poetry. And we write to each other. She sends me some postcards, and I didn't ask her permission, but I was going to read one of her poems that she sent here.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So I should have asked her for permission. But anyhow, she writes these missives or these small poems, and those are largely my readings. It's my letters, my correspondence, and that makes me feel like I have enough fuel in me to survive. That's one. And I know Jessica Holmes keeps away from AI and ChatGPT. She's afraid of it. So she has, in this day and age, it's hard to read folks that are, authentic and not using AI to write things like poetry. The second, I think, since I've been back here closer to more the center of Mexico, which is Mexico City, I have had more access to a lot of the former newspapers from Ricardo Flores Magón, which is considered the Mexican anarchist. And he writes so plainly. It's just into it. For such a person with such a great intellect, his writings were aimed at workers and peasants, ordinary people, not academics. So he had to be able to use language to help understand. Not it didn't help. He didn't help anybody. They understood it. It was to be able to give language to the context of which we're living under the dictatorship of Porfirio Diaz, and that was the dictatorship during what years? It would be the 1900s, and he then passed away in 1922, I think. And everything he wrote was just so plain, but powerful and impactful. And he was against capitalism and large landowners, state repression and corruption. And it was just clear, forceful language. And I think for me, going back through some of those issues, I haven't read everything, but just it's so easy for me to just grasp the situation at that time. And that's been for me very grounding where I stand. And I'm glad I was able to get access to that here at the libraries, especially since, some of these readings were smuggled through borders and it was a different time, Now I think we're just watching and hearing everything online, so. And then, I mentioned.
Can you say his name again?
Ricardo Flores Magón. Ricardo Flores Magón. So I can type it up. Yeah, I mentioned them several times. For that. And then the other book, I tried to. So my French is passable. I can have conversations with my friends. And the time that I worked in France, I wouldn't say I could use it to interpret, but I have to maintain the language. I always think I have to maintain the 5 languages that I have. And sometimes I forget, it happens even when I'm on What's Left. I don't speak English for the whole week, and then suddenly I'm speaking English 1 hour with you all, and then I'm starting to forget a few words here and there. And I don't have interpreting gigs like I used to. And so it's a constant maintaining. It's like it's just constantly maintaining languages. And so I've been reading, it's an indulgence, André Charrière, who is a French writer from the 1930s, who talks about, it's the famous book Papillon, who he escapes, he was sentenced, he was convicted of murder, something he said that he never did, and then he was sent to Guyana. You know about this, Michael Hoffman? And then he was sent, by the way, I don't know why I say Michael Hoffman together, as if that's our whole name. And he was then sent to South America, and he was in this prison, and he talks about the isolation, the torture, and everything he goes through, and the perseverance, and then how he escapes, and then goes through the jungle, and then oceans. He swims and lands in Caracas, Venezuela, and then he's living his life there, and he becomes this political. He thinks of him as a political prisoner, and he finally ends up back in France, and he is. His whole journey, the way he writes, is so good. It's just so well written that so many people think that those are actually all his stories. He might have heard it from other prisoners and compiled all those stories and made it his own. But no one can deny he's such a great writer, and I enjoy reading. Some of the words I don't always remember, and so I have my French dictionary on the side. But maintaining a language is important when you have a few, and so I try to keep up, and that's what I've been reading, and it's an indulgence, really. I mean, so I don't know how to make it political, except that maybe if I was to survive in a prison, now I have some techniques here. Who knows?
That is definitely political.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
Then possibly the last question, or maybe the second to last question. And this is a two-parter. And Michael, you're going to start. What sort of political personal changes do you feel like you've experienced this year that you can share with us, basically?
Well, I'll say that this year marked the beginning of me actually trying to, organize with people again. Started a little before that, I would say. But so actually, since I started what's left, having a routine of actually reading and thinking about politics, I realize I've learned a ton in the last year. Like, I've learned so much and been exposed to so many different ideas. For example, understanding like the critical libertarian trend and what's sort of at the heart of the disagreement. Like, why would people be so against government repression, and then also see that somehow immigration was somehow a problem, right? Or somehow they want immigration to be enforced by the state. And one of the things I've learned is that, in a certain sense, that libertarian position is a result of very low levels of class struggle, which I can understand. Not seeing how working class people actually factor into the equation. They can identify when the ruling class has tried to impose something on us, but they don't see that there's an interrelation with regular people who actually do have some collective agency, right? So a libertarian, some of them, I would say, are essentially communists that can't even imagine collective liberation, right? But they're people who agree essentially that the state, we don't want a state that lies to us, and we don't want to have, we don't want to be repressed and told what to do and lied to. So that's been very interesting, and it connects with a lot of the reading into different kind of anarchist tendencies. In terms of my own personal growth, I realized that when I was formulating things without really being very active, it was very clear. And now I've had to complicate a lot of the lessons that I had taken away from my prior period of activity, by now being engaged in debates with real people. And I think I'm in middle age now, where I never had much of a filter to begin with, but now I have even less of a filter, which has, I've clashed with liberals. I just have no patience for their privileged politics and their, what I see now is essentially completely counterinsurgent. I mean, it's like COINTELPRO politics. They're like, no, we can't talk about actually waging a battle to win a reform. We have to talk about how we're relating to each other, and you have privilege. And it's like, yes, let's not think outward at the system. Let's look at each other. And it's like a ideology perfectly adapted to being completely dominated, right? And that's been really challenging. But it's basically like my theory has now come into practice once again, and it's it's both fun because I'm focused on those elements of joy, like when I finally get together with people and we have some sense of agreement on how ridiculous the system is, and we want to try and do something together, like that. Actually, those are real moments of joy, but it also, I think I understand even more deeply now how much we're controlled. The thickness of this cage that we're in. I don't think I even fully understood that before, and now I'm seeing it. And the light's coming from very, very few specific places, like people throwing bricks at ice, but and a few other things, and young people just thinking critically and saying like, wow, this system is fucked. But yeah, it's been a ton of growth for me.
Mhm.
And I owe it to both you and Eduardo and Kenny and the reading group and Fabio Vigi, and it's been I've been stretched a lot this year, I'll say.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I'd like to ask you just
Mhm.
quickly, Michael, how has that affected your relationship with your partner? But you don't have to answer it. I'm just, I'm very curious.
I mean, that's an interesting question, because actually my partner and I, there's a complex constellation of like the kids and our routine with the kids and my ability. I basically have, yes, had to learn to communicate more about when these things are happening, and also just be honest. Like when I'm in my head and feeling depressed because of political events, like I have to just explain that to her and
Yeah.
let her more into the stuff that's going on in my head. But it's been challenging. It has been challenging.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm like emotionally not available because I'm stuck in my head about things, and that's something I'm working on not doing. But we're okay right now. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I didn't mean for you to respond here
it's cool.
publicly with
It's a
this.
good question.
Yep.
Anyhow,
Eduardo?
there's two things I think political changes. One has been constant since we've started What's Left. It's working as I did with the episodes, working with Bantercast Live when I was invited to work on the podcast with my good buddy Jake. We've known each other since we were,
Mhm.
adolescents. And he is on the very complacent, complicit Republican right, reactionary right, and that's the way I would say he is, because he's a Republican voter. And he thinks in that axis, left, right kind of way. And I love him. I truly do love him. I can't. He sent me. I have a project here called Amora Oasis. It's Oasis. Amora is just the name, and then Oasis. And I write a weekly bulletin for my community, and it's about and it's a member community, and I write about my struggles. And one of them, I brought up Jake. How do you learn to be at peace with people who you love, and you still have political differences and even maybe personal differences? And I could handle the political fights, but there were a few shady things he did, like mute me, or he would then edit me or make me look bad on camera, or, and he wouldn't admit to it. And then we had to get a mediator, and then we talked about it. He admit to it and he apologized, but the stuff is online. And I think he was so infuriated with the fact that I'm just, I've had experience of being on What's Left. I've debated Andy, and we've talked over each other. I mean, there's episodes but Andy never muted me. Andy never, edited me in a way that made me look bad. And so there are these things he would do, and little, you know, tweaks to our debates that I just was really angry about. And I just didn't, I felt distant. So he sent me Merry Christmas, and, kind of made me realize, like, our friendship has to be strong and resilient. And even if we have political differences. So he loves Trump. He adores Trump. He has pictures of Trump up, and he's a fanatic of Trump. He has the MAGA hat. He has a flag, and he has USA, and he chants USA, and he adores Trump. And sometimes he likes to talk like Trump, and I think it's fucking annoying, but I love him. And we've had our childhood so wrapped up in the way that we were as kids, trying to get out of a religion. We both became atheists, and suddenly he's thinking that the Christian right is the best way to go about the world. And then, fuck, what are you talking about? Shit. And I just don't know where he's gone all this way. And and it's just, I don't know what's going on. But anyhow, so I'm not as triggered as I used to be when we first started what's left, because this was really born out of a desire to publicly shame him. I remember. Do you remember that, Andy? And I don't attack him for his white privilege. I've been feeling a lot like I've been a white person in Latin America, by the way, because I'm not Venezuelan, so I can't comment about the Venezuelan situation, apparently. Now I know how white people feel when they want to discuss things about identity. It's just, oh my God. Now I make up memes and say, you can't comment about Greenland unless you're a polar bear. You know, so.
That's right. Check your privilege.
Oh
You're
my
not a polar
God.
bear.
But you know, I have like 200 Venezuelans on my social media account, and they just go after me. You're not Venezuelan. You can't comment about the situation. I'm like, oh my God, does this feel like identity politics thing? You know. So anyhow, the thing is, I don't attack him for being white and for not understanding me. I attack him as someone I think is a traitor to the working class. That's how I see it. You know, like he is, like my Venezuelan friends, asking for intervention. That's how I see him. He wants intervention, U.S. American intervention onto the working class, onto the small of us, that the peasant folk. That's how I see who he is. I see him as that. And that doesn't take away the love that I have for him. So the development keeps growing. It just keeps growing. I think it's not new to this year. It's just learning to live with or having relationships who we have political differences with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even on the trans issue, like, you know, I have deep affection for Jessica, and we have maybe slight differences there around that. And you know, and even with my partner on the trans issue, you know, he does think that people can be born with the sense of in the wrong body, and I differ in that area. I'm not sure how much social media is actually influencing our young people. That doesn't mean I don't respect folk that might actually identify as such, and I don't know what I would do if I had a child that was identifying as such. So these are the areas where I'm trying to figure out with my partner, what would we do if we were encountering in that situation, if we had kids, you know, if we adopted a child. So those are things I worry about. I'm not like folks who want to demonize people who do identify as trans. Not like that either. So it's a challenge, and those are the political developments I'm dealing with. Maybe the other one is I'm just so clear. I'm angry, and I'm so clear, more so how we had this discussion last week. There is a need for a revolution, and that might mean we have to protect ourselves. And I cannot say more than that because everything will be twisted. But I am so clear with that. And it feels to me that the world is getting scarier. And I don't, that's why I'm not a monk, but I think what centers me and grounds me is my meditation, even as an atheist. But I do think that we have to protect our loved ones and our comrades. And I find ways to organize wherever I'm at. You know, in my community and the street market that I'm a part of, there's a hierarchy at the street market where I'm at on the weekends. And I don't like how we're being charged. Everyone's being charged every day for every weekend. We're charged a certain kind of monetary. When who decided that? The rules are arbitrary, and I have been speaking to colleagues and getting to know them, and that's my organizing self right there, where I want to create a collective of us street marketers and see if we can top like get rid of this whole hierarchy and actually organize for us to be more of us. The collective decides what we do with it, and we decide by vote. And we're gonna how we can organize. I'm still trying to figure this out. So I've been having conversations around that. So it's just so clear to me how we need to start here and not exert. People ask me, who are you going to vote for? Because we voted in 2025. And I said, I'm not voting in here in Mexico. I'm not voting. I'm going to exert my energy elsewhere. My energy is going to be with the people that are in my neighborhood, with the people at my work site, which are the street market, with people who are working folk. And that's where I'm going to exert my energy. I'm so clear now than I was, 5 years ago. And so It's continuous. And that to me is beyond the theoretical. It's on the ground. And that's where I need to build. And I need to build protection for us as working class folk. And that takes effort and time, and even involving my partner into that idea and those that sort of working space is challenging, because that's not how he thinks. And he thinks of work sort of conventionally, the way that we all think. I was just going to go, make a living and then go back home and try to rest. But I'm always thinking to myself, well, what about the future though? We have to think about, what are we going to do? It's fine and all if you watch Netflix, but then suddenly you see the streets being taken over by the military. How do we feel about that? We have to be prepared for that. So I'm not too sure. I want us to be uh, caught off guard. I want us to be prepared. And for us to be prepared, we have to start the work now. And that means we have to get moving, dialogues, conversations. And then after that, who's going to do this and who's going to do that? And I don't want to do the whole thing. I want us to work together. And if we're collectively deciding something, and if we're not okay with that sort of hierarchy, then let's fucking leave and let's go over occupy another street and now have a street market there, So those are the things that come to my mind. And I'm so clear on the direction that I'm moving towards. And it's constant, like I said last weekend. It was last weekend. It's like washing dishes. They never get done. It was like my laundry. They never get done. It's for everything. And that's how I think of this. It's wherever you're at, you have to organize. And that is my project. It's constant organization. So I don't leave it to the top to deal with our matters. I want to deal with it here with us. And so those are the things I'm getting clear with.
Right. And using your analogy that you used to use before. So if when I see the train going, I'll get on it. Now, no. I mean, I really appreciate you're trying to lay some tracks down. You're trying to get a cart built, trying to put some wheels on it and to see if it can move, and I think, and if that thing moves, you'll get on it, so I think that really, it does speak to what I think the revolutionary process is at least at the individual level. It's not an individual project, but I think you've expressed, that's probably the best expression I've heard is what you just said right there. And I really agree with it. For me, two things come to mind. When I was in the ISO, and people in the ISO, and particularly Brian, got mad at me for getting this. One of my favorite shirts that I had in the ISO was had like a red fist on it, and on the back it had "Godless Communist" written on the back. And I love that shirt. I was like, "This, hell yes!" Was an atheist and am an atheist still, but I was like, I wanted to flaunt my "Godless Communist," thing. I think I still would like that shirt, to be honest. But I would say that in light of my relationship with Jake, what's happened with my family around and God, and how it's transformed them both personally but also politically and made us more aligned. I've definitely changed my view of like I feel like if I meet a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew and they're sincere in their beliefs, I think that's a pretty good starting point. Like, let's start with that, particularly if you're more into that than some politician or the state or something like that. Now, clearly, these religions are institutions and blah blah blah, but particularly when you start to hear them talk about Jesus or Muhammad and like their relationship with that, I feel like I have a chance of talking to somebody who could understand the independent project that is the revolutionary project, that it is independent of these forces. So I have a changed view of religion, a very much softened view, and even a potential alliance. Like this guy Thorne, who listens to our stuff, really thinks that communism and Christianity are like intertwined. I'm not going to argue with him about it. I'm not saying that's the way I see it, but I understand, like, the way that Jesus led his life. I see how people think of that as revolutionary and from below. And so that's changed. I think a bigger change has been really what's happened in my life with Brandy, in relationship to the political world. Like for many years, like I've just been able to enjoy my marriage and life with Brandy, and been like, man, things are just going well for me and Brandy, and the world is going to hell. But somehow it's like things are fine over here with me and her, And I'm like, there's kind of there was a tension between, not tension, but there was just a difference. I would be like, I would talk about how fucked up the world is, and then I would turn my camera off, and I'm like, I'm back here with my woman, woman that I love, and dog, and home, and we're comfortable, and I think the world is starting to, the vortex of the crisis is starting to draw us in with financial strain and health strains and things like that. And I don't welcome that, but I do feel like it's like I was telling Brandy, I was like, well, I think this is the way the world is going to be. Like, I think we are going to get drawn in. Like, I think inflation is going to change our future, And I think the way the world is getting worse is going to make our lives more unstable. And I would say the difference between the life me and Brandy are living is starting to be pulled into that vortex of the world that's kind of rotten. And it has been humbling, frightening, but it is the world, and it is the world I'm trying to change. And I feel more aligned in my own life that has to change, or else we're going to continue to get drawn into the negativity. And so, I worry about us, but I also believe that I have comrades, and the world is a problem, and it's going to make problems for not just other people, it's going to make problems for us. And I think that's what's happening, is some of the problems in the world are starting to draw in, and I can feel the tendrils of that world come into this kind of idyllic life I've had for some years since we got married, and even maybe before then. And that has been, that's both a negative change and a positive change. I don't know what to say about why I call it positive, but I will say it feels positive because it feels real. And I think that's a big difference. Last thing. What about appreciations? I'm going to start us off. First off, Kenny is not here today, but I want to appreciate Kenny for being able to have his time to come back onto What's Left. I just think he brings so much passion to these episodes, and even I love Kenny as a former student, as Hema's previous partner, and it's wonderful to have him on these episodes. And even when he's not here, I feel like he's here. Michael, I'm just glad you joined us. Brandy doesn't listen to as many episodes, but when you joined, she was like, "That guy is good." I'm glad he has come on here. We've had a few people join, like Alex came in for a while, and he's a good guy. Welcome him. But Michael, you've brought a lot of serious, grounded points of view that are in the Marxist realm, but are different than mine and are challenging to me. And also, you've really helped me talk about. You've asked me to think about your world, but it's forced me to think about my world that I'm trying to organize in. And that has really been very valuable to me. So it's so good to have an old ISO comrade be a current What's Left, trying to make a revolution comrade. And I really am grateful for you, Michael, for coming back. Or you've been here, but just to being part of the show and to coming back into my life.
Well, I get a ton out of feeling somewhat halfway useful with the ideas I have. And the fact that you hold it down, Andy, you keep it going, man. It's actually showing me how powerful just that is, right? Being consistent and consistently creating that space, right? It's like the scaffolding of the party, right? But but it's just, you're just really want people to talk through this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for that, because I would be going crazy,
Yeah.
on my own. And yeah,
And I,
very much appreciate you,
yeah, sure. And
both of you.
I wanna say something to you, Eduardo. We've been doing this together for 8 years. I loved you before we started this, but now it's even more. Like it's just, as a friend, as a brother, as and sometimes maybe there's a mentor thing going on a little bit, but it's just amazing to do this with you. And I was really impressed with your episode with you and Luis Me, where in many ways Luis Me was saying like, I'm the guy that anyone can talk to, that anyone can come in here, and you're like the hard guy who knows what he's talking about. And I was like, oh my God, Eduardo has become me, and Luis Me is Eduardo. And- but it's but there are things like in terms of how you're speaking of revolution, like that I do believe we are now just in alignment on. But I appreciate the fact that you are just such a unique voice and such a unique person. There literally is no one who has ever been, will ever be Eduardo. And you just do things so in your own way that I can't put a finger to, but it's just I feel blessed and honored and grateful that we became such close friends. And I'm really glad I can share you with Michael and Kenny and every other and Brandy. And it's you are a glorious find in this world that is very rotten. So I really appreciate you continuing to do this with me, even as I wonder if you can continue this, particularly if you go in the Spanish direction. But this is always your home here. What's left.
Yeah, I will stay with this group, of course. I will. It's like my book club that I've been part of for a very long time back in SF. I'm going to stick with them. I appreciate uh, I appreciate first, I want to say the third co-host today, which is our audience, because I go on to these rambles and I tell Andy, I call him afterwards, I just keep going on these. I listen to myself and Michael, I once you criticized yourself and I was like, I don't think you're fine, Michael. I also go on these tangents and I don't know why I do that. I digress and it's just the way I think. So I apologize for folks. Sometimes my mind goes every which way. And of course, I'm very grateful. I want everyone to know that Andy does all the behind the scenes work. He puts up everything online, and that is so hard. I just don't know. That's why I failed at the Spanish language. Now I'm just doing live. That's what I'm just doing. I'm like, I'm just gonna do live. I'm not working with the whole thing that Andy does. So I appreciate you doing that for us, and also for always engaging us politically to think and challenging, and that is what we have. That's what I think what makes us give us hard homework for us all. So I appreciate that. And as far as Michael, I told you, Andy, I said I want Michael on. Do you remember that? I said that. I said, oh Andy, I've called Andy afterwards. I said, I want Michael. I think he's the one. Do you remember that, Andy? I think we finally found
Yeah.
the other Beatles member.
Yeah. I mean, I miss Jessica too. I do miss
I
Jessica.
do,
Welcome you back.
and
Yeah.
I've invited her back,
Yeah.
but she says she wants to stay out of the internet world for a time.
Yeah.
So that's fine. And she's working on lots of writing projects, and she should be. And I envy her really, and I envy anyone that can be illegal and undocumented, and anyone that can stay off the grid. Truly, I've been on the grid since I was born, I realize. So at this point, I'm going to be on the grid actually using my voice. And then if they come down with it, well,
Yeah.
but so if you can get off the grid like Jessica's trying to do, go do that.
Yeah.
That's what you should be doing. That's the most radical thing you can do. So I thank you, Michael, for being here and for your family to also be patient with us and to also make the time. I really do say that because I know what it's like having raised a child myself. What's it like to do multiple things at the same time, which is hard. And Kenny's not here, but I want to say I told Andy, I confessed to Andy, Kenny and I had breakfast before I came over. I came back to Mexico, and I just laid out to him. I anyone who knows me, if I don't like something, that's why no one can second guess. if you think I don't like you, you don't have to guess. I will tell you if I don't like you. And if you do something, Michael, I will tell you. So I don't like that. You know, if I get annoyed, I will tell you. I don't like to do backstabbing and backtalking. That happened to me during 2020. People talked about me, and I hated that, and it really hurt my feelings. I'd rather people tell me in my face what they don't like. And
Me too.
yeah, I don't
I
like
can
that.
take it. Probably.
So if you don't hear anything from me, it's because there isn't anything I have to tell you. Andy knows. And so Kenny is someone that evaded me for years. And I tried calling him. I tried meeting up at his house. I invited him over to my house, and he would not have a conversation. I wish it was here for him to hear this. And I would try to have, and he'll listen to this, he knows. And I would try to have a conversation with him because he annoyed the shit out of me. So then I try to tell him these things. Anytime Andy got on my nerves, I tell him on this platform online. People can see that. I've told him, I called him out, or on the phone. We've yelled at each other. But Kenny, I could not have those conversations with. So unfortunately, I did what I hate doing. I started talking shit about Kenny to Andy. Kenny knows that now. And I'd make inside jokes like he was too busy. Because he was always saying, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. We're all fucking busy, Kenny. We're all busy. And then I'd say in the middle of the episode, and anyone can go and scavenge. What's that called? The scavenger hunt thing?
Anyway, there's an appreciation part to this.
And I said to Kenny, I said many times, oh yeah, you're just busy. And Andy would know that. What I'm trying to say by this, we had a heart-to-heart. We talked about it. I told him everything. And I'm so appreciative we'd had that conversation. It really lifted a load off of me. And I really am grateful that Kenny is a part of this. I told them the Beatles analogy you gave me, Andy, and it helped me understand Kenny. And Kenny is unique, and he has been a part of this, even as he's been through difficult times, which I cannot speak to more of. That's him to say. But he has shared a lot with us, and he's been very vulnerable. I don't know how he does it, because he is so vulnerable, and he never edits anything out. And I've been vulnerable, and I've edited things out. So that says volumes.
I love that Kenny Zapata. Love that guy.
All right.
It was a real treat to have you hang with my boys. You and Kenny hanging with my boys in the mission. That was very cool. That was very cool.
I love kids. And I think they have been very patient with you having taken away time from you on here. So thank you.
Yeah. We appreciate that about your sons. They are very good to us. And your wife. We appreciate
Hey, yeah. We're lucky to have a supportive thing here and to have enough space in our life to do things like this. So it's like we're on the grid. We have our privilege, and so we're gonna use it for something. I
don't know. Anyway, 2025 is in the books. Now we're off to 2026 for I think we'll do another 51, 52 episodes, and see where it leads us. So I'm excited.
Yeah, we'll see. It's been tough, but yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Let's just do the best that we can and survive. That's all
I think we should do what you said, Eduardo. People should hopefully listen to what you said about revolution and how to be a revolutionary right now. If they did that, I think we'd be in better shape.
It's just dishes.
Wash dishes.
I wash dishes.
Do the laundry.
Do laundry and wash dishes the rest of your life. All right. Shall we conclude? Is that good? Or yeah? All right. Yep. Well, that does it for this week's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for always being a part of us, and as well. All right, What's Left is a weekly political podcast / channel challenging the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and our guests on the episode notes wherever you found this episode, or on our blog at whatsuppodcasts.com. You can find past episodes to this podcast / channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, if you like anything you have heard here, please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications to any of our platforms on Spotify, iTunes, Podcast, BitChute, Odyssey, YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram. You can always find us and any of those links in the episode notes wherever you found this episode. If you would like to give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, you can always contact us. If you are part of the Spanish language audience, you can also contact me directly at Don Eduardo Abarca. Contact me directly and you can always join. I'm trying to have people, regular folk. The beginning of What's Left was like that. When we are still that way, we're trying to have people. So please communicate with me and share it with people who also speak Spanish. And if at the future I attempt sign language in French, let's see. It took me a long time to jumpstart Spanish. Right. I'm Eduardo Abarca with co-hosts Michael Hoffman and Andy Lipson. Thank you all very much. Thank you for listening. Catch us next week. Ciao, ciao.